I'd start the meeting by sharing that I was the $1 million winner of the Powerball. No, I was not, but I am so glad to be with all of you today. For those I don't know, my name is Cindy Peterson. Welcome to Downtown Rotary. Please join me in the pledge of Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in reciting the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Reagan Smith will now join me on stage for the invocation.
Please bow your heads if you choose. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your innumerable gifts and blessings we enjoy. Our lives, our livelihoods, our friends, our families, our freedoms. We praise you for your steadfastness and faithfulness. We especially want to lift up our veterans to you today in prayer, those men and women who have faithfully served the armed forces of the United States, airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines. Those men and women who have kept the flame of freedom alive and who have kindled or rekindled the flame in other countries. We ask of you an increased blessing on their behalf this week. They have served well and given much. We particularly ask you to pour out your spirit of comfort on the service members and their families, and ask you to heal their bodies, hearts, minds, and spirits of those who are hurting. And once more, we ask you to be with us in our efforts to do your work here as we endeavor to better local, state, national, and international conditions. We offer and ask this in your name. Amen.
I'd like to welcome all of our guests and thank our wonderful greeters for the welcome and the warm smile that everyone receives when we walk in today. We are going to put Jesse to work. This is something that we started I believe a number of years ago. This week is Veterans Week, with Veterans Day being on Friday, and we have a number of downtown Rotarians as veterans. So I would like to invite the veterans in the room to please stand. We will be bringing a microphone around so each of you can share the branch you served in and year served.
Bernie DeWald, I served in the Army. I was stationed in Panama for 18 months, the rest of the States.
Dr. Douglas Pay and I served at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Kept the Vietnamese out of Boston until after the war, and then they all showed up.
Steve has a mouthful. Regan Smith, U.S. Army 1st Cav Division and South Dakota Army National Guard.
Steve Sikorsky, United States Army, 1964 through 69, Korea, Minneapolis, and Oklahoma City. And when I was in the missile battalion in Minneapolis, the Russians never got past Winnipeg.
Dean Karski, Air Force from 1983 to 1989, all stateside, New Mexico, Florida, South Dakota. And I brought with me a guest. I'll let him introduce himself.
Joel Arriola Colmenares. I served from 2001 till 2022, all over the States, and then overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan and Germany.
Paul Weckman, U.S. Navy, 26 years active duty, moved 17 times, deployed quite a few times. That's the Navy. But Anyway, glad to be here as a guest. Thank you.
Eric Ellefson, United States Air Force, 114th Fighter Wing here in Sioux Falls. Number of deployments, Iraq, Qatar, but 23 and a half years.
Eric Gage, South Dakota National Guard, 2001 to 2012, 7 different locations stateside and overseas.
Robert Walker, United States Navy, 1982 to 1986.
Did we get everyone? Please join me in a grateful recognition of these individuals. We are in a new month, which means we have a new group of junior Rotarians. With us for the month of November will be Sam Vondra from Lincoln, Carson Weiner from Sioux Falls Christian, and Nancy Peter from Jefferson. And we'll be hearing from them in the following weeks to come. Before new member induction and information about Rotary Foundation Month, I would like to remark on the political ads you most likely have seen from Nome's campaign utilizing content from October 17th Downtown Rotary meeting, where gubernatorial candidate Jamie Smith spoke to our club. There has been continuous conversation about if, when, and how to respond. A request was made to Nome's campaign to discontinue using Downtown Rotary footage. When considering whether Downtown Rotary should make a public statement, it was concluded that doing so would most likely draw attention back to our club rather than result in an outcome leading to goodwill and better friendships or being beneficial to all concerned. Responding could also lead to being viewed as partisan, and as you all know, Downtown Rotary is a nonpartisan service club. Responding could also lead to being partisan, which I just said. At Downtown Rotary, we pride ourselves as being a place where important conversations happen, and we cannot compromise that. Although we will not be making a public statement, it is important Downtown Rotarians are provided insight and context. Focused on looking forward, not backward, the Board of Directors will evaluate our current process and policy regarding meeting content and determine how to best position ourselves for handling the use of our program content in the future. In the interim, we welcome any questions, any comments, any input on how to proceed productively in the future. We'll now switch our energy to one of my favorite things, new member introductions. I'd like to invite Ryan Martin forward to introduce our newest Rotarian.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Cindy and fellow Rotarians. Real briefly, I get the opportunity to introduce a friend of mine this afternoon, Laura Arnett. Laura and I crossed paths when she was at a former workplace where she did digital ads, and then also through her work at the Furniture Mission as a board of director. And then also finally, I've had the opportunity to sit in on a few of her BNI meetings that she's also the president of and leads a chapter there, which she runs a really nice meeting too. So I'll give her a heads up on that too. But with that, I'd like everyone to welcome Laura to the stage.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. So I'm very excited to be here. I've heard about Downtown Rotary for a lot of years, usually through my previous jobs, and I never felt that I was meant to fit into a room like this. It always felt very elite and in a very good way. But as I've gotten to know so many of you, I know that to be absolutely true. This is an incredible group of people, and I am just so excited to be here and not just be a member of Rotary, but to become a full-on Rotarian. So thank you so much.
As I indicated a moment ago, November is Rotary Foundation Month. I'm going to invite Kaylee Etram up, who co-chairs our Rotary International Committee, to introduce all the activity of the month.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, we have a new committee in place this year as the Rotary International Committee. And one of the things that as our group got together to talk about things that we wanted to share with this club and goals that we had for the year, November being Rotary Foundation Month was really important to us. So over the next 4 weeks, we will share information with you about the foundation. I promise it will be exciting, and some opportunities that we have to make an impact here for things that are happening both locally and around the world. So, to start us off, one of the things I wanted to share with you is just the mission of the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation helps Rotary members to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. The foundation was founded more than 100 years ago, and they have granted more than $4 billion on life-changing sustainable projects. One of the things that we will be sharing with you this month is an opportunity to get engaged in one of those projects that is being led by some of the folks that are in this room. We have an opportunity to partner with As One Ministries, along with a few Rotary clubs, both in our district and in Uganda, Africa, to have a medical mission trip that will bring wheelchairs, an ultrasound machine, gait belts, and slider boards to the people of Uganda. There's an opportunity to partner with As One Ministries, who are on the ground making things happen in Uganda. And we have partnered with a number of Rotary clubs within our district to secure the funds with a global grant to provide this opportunity for these folks, not only those who will have the wheelchairs or the patients in the hospitals, but also the caregivers. We've talked so many times about shortages and the hardships that our caregivers have had over the last number of years. It's no different in Africa. So if we can give them some of the tools and the resources that they need, hopefully we can sustain their help for folks in their country and make sure that they have a healthier population to work with. So we will be sharing more information, but ideally we have a challenge out to the Rotary Club of Downtown Sioux Falls. There have been a number of dollars already committed. There's actually someone within our club who has anonymously donated $20,000 toward this. But we have a challenge to this club. If we can raise $12,000 in the next couple of months, given to the Rotary Foundation on behalf of this project, we can launch this project in 2023 to impact hundreds of lives in Uganda. So we would love to share that opportunity with you. Every week we'll have more and more details that will come to light and opportunities to give to this. But as a club, we always say we do very well with helping out in our community, both in service and in dollars. This is an opportunity to help our community impact a community across the world and help them achieve a better quality of life. We do have a video that was provided by As One Ministries to show the impact of healthcare in Uganda, just as a teaser of what this would do for their folks in that country. And then next week, we'll be back with you with more. Let myself or any of our committee members know if you have questions. Thank you.
"2020 illuminated for all of us the immense need for reliable healthcare. Unfortunately, in Uganda, when the COVID-19 pandemic began, research indicated that there were only 55 ICU beds in the entire country. That's 55 beds for 45 million people. But even before the pandemic, this has been the case for years across Uganda. For decades, the leading causes of illnesses and death have been preventable and treatable. That's issues like AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, typhoid, respiratory tract infections, diarrheal diseases, maternal and delivery complications. And all of these issues continue to wreak havoc even today. Leading medical institutions around the world state that Uganda's greatest healthcare need is access to reliable medical care. That's both infrastructure and human resources. The average Ugandan lacks basic access to doctors, nurses, health specialists, clinics, hospitals, reliable equipment, medications, and educational services. All services that could meet the physical and emotional needs of Ugandans. And we've seen it firsthand. In the rural communities we partner with, these problems are even more amplified due to their remote locations, rundown facilities, and lack of investment. Families we love, parents, children, grandparents, all unnecessarily suffering. So in 2021, we decided if we were truly going to advance healing, wholeness, and Christ's redemptive goodness into the life of communities in Uganda, then a core component of our model would have to be centered around the adequate healthcare services provided for all. And thanks to you and our amazing team in Uganda, we did it. Welcome to our first medical center in Namayamba, Healing Grace Medical Center, owned and operated by Esmond Ministries Uganda.
Growing up, I lost a friend, a dear friend, my closest friend, to sickle cell disease, just because we couldn't afford to buy blood. From that time on, my dream really changed. I stopped thinking of the engineering that I dearly dreamt of to being a doctor.
This facility started in January 18, 2022, just at its commencement. The turn up alone proves that there is a problem that has been tackled.
So Ugandans really need the services that we are really providing, because by putting clinics very close to them, we are solving a lot. We are reducing on the death of children. We are reducing on maternal deaths. We are reducing on deaths from avoidable causes.
We have a holistic mission. So we both help people's needs. Clinic can treat people and people get well. But with that, they can also teach to them the good news, the hope that we have.
All the services we are giving to the people of the community, it's love. By loving and by caring, I actually see us serving Christ.
We couldn't be more grateful for this opportunity to run a sustainable medical center in a community that needed it deeply. Every single day, patients are receiving the care they need to live healthy lives. It's a joy to see how many of you have enabled a vision of Ugandans empowering Ugandans. Ugandans healthy, alive to Christ, and active in their own communities. By 2025, our vision is to have a medical clinic in each community we serve. It's all a part of accomplishing our dream to end spiritual, relational, and economic poverty, one community at a time. Thank you for joining us for the second episode of Season 2 of The Story.
Philanthropy is the true economic engine of Sioux Falls. So Kayla, Dave, and committee, thank you for giving downtown Rotarians an opportunity to invest local dollars in an international impact. I, for one, am very excited about what I'm going to learn over the coming weeks, and I hope as downtown Rotarians we can really lean in, again, to the impact that we make. On to our program. I would like to invite our moderator and panelists on stage. While they make their way, I will remind this group that Downtown Rotary is leading a service opportunity at Feeding South Dakota that will be on November 21st, 1:30 to 4. Rotarians will pack backpacks of food that will be distributed to children in Sioux Falls area schools. The program, if you're unfamiliar, provides at-risk children with nutritious, easy-to-prepare foods during weekends and holidays when school is not in session. Feeding South Dakota distributes more than 32,000 packages of food each week to children throughout the Sioux Falls School District and in 10 additional surrounding communities. If you would like to volunteer, please touch base with Angie in the back, or you can sign your name on the sign-up sheet that is also on the back table. With that, our program today, Collaborating to Improve Lives of Veterans. I'm going to turn it over to veteran, President-elect, and Moderator Eric Ellefson.
Thanks, Cindy. Well, thank you everybody for being here. It's a big week for a lot of people on this stage. I know Eric at the end, VCP, I think he sent me out his schedule. It was like every day there is something that he is speaking on, which is a great thing because our community is open to listening and to hearing about some of the challenges that veterans are going through. Before we get started, I just want to take a minute and we're going to watch another video. Apologize, but this video is definitely an uplifter. So if we could cue that up, I'd like to get that started.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. And to bear true faith. And allegiance to the same. That I will obey. The orders of. The President of the United States. And the orders of. Those officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The timing of this holiday is quite deliberate in terms of historical fact. But somehow it always seems quite fitting to me that this day comes deep in autumn when the colors are muted and the days seem to invite contemplation. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise, but most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. In memory of those who gave the last full measure of devotion, may our efforts to achieve lasting peace gain strength. Let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and born by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
In that video get me? So many. But a couple of things I just want to point out. First and foremost, when you heard President Reagan talk there, I think you heard a lot about paying tribute to those who gave their lives, who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And oftentimes as a veteran, I find myself on Memorial Day, which is in May, feeling odd. And odd because people are thanking me, when the true statement and the purpose of Memorial Day is to thank those who, and the families of those who gave their lives. So a little bit of a fun fact there, not fun fact, but education. Veterans ultimately take any thank you that anyone offers, but on that date, I think it's important to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifices are honored on Memorial Day today, and this whole week is really to honor those who served in general to the service of our country. So a little bit there. But that video is pretty darn powerful, and I remember I think everybody in this room can probably speak a little bit to some of those welcome home 9/11 conversations or those events that happened and kind of how they draw on you. But one more thing, raise your hand if you're a Vietnam era veteran in the audience. One, that's what I thought. I thought there was only one, Steve. As a post 9/11 vet, I think our society in general post 9/11 has really come around and supported veterans in terms of resources as well as just overall support. And I think you're going to hear some of that today. But I don't think that was always the case. And I think the Vietnam era's veterans still deserve, from my perspective, to stand. And could you stand, please? One more time? Sorry. I know most vets don't like this, but I just want to say thank you on behalf of a post 9/11 vet to someone who maybe didn't have the same welcome home that we had as we sit up here. So thank you. Well, for anyone who has Vietnam era veterans in their lives, please extend a sincere appreciation from all of us today. As we get started with this program, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about kind of what the focus of today is. And the focus is really to educate a small segment of what's going on in our community around veterans. There is a lot of great things that are happening. And I would say most of the conversation today is going to be from that perspective. We are going to try and focus on the positive side of the conversation that we're about to have. But I do believe that while focusing on veterans and specifically a small subsection of homeless veterans with this conversation, I think we'll set up Eric Erickson's conversation for next week, which is going to be around general homeless task force initiatives for the city and kind of how we're progressing there. So with that being said, let's welcome our panelists. Just to my immediate left, I have Rachel Gangle, who is a supervisory social worker for the homeless programs amongst the VA. To her left, we have Robert Walker, who is a veteran of the U.S. Navy. So thank you very much, sir. And he is also a veterans coordinator and counselor for VOA's Dakotas here in Sioux Falls. And then finally, at the last space, we have Eric Gage, who is a vet of the United States Air Force, 114th Fighter Wing, and executive director for Veterans Community Project. Some of you may know that organization as the tiny home community that's being built here in Sioux Falls. So welcome, and thank you very much to each of you for your time. We've got about a half an hour, so let's get started. Nationally, statistically speaking, I was looking up some things, and Pew Research has this, and these are stats from 2021, but there's about 1.3 total U.S. military members in the United States today. That number is actually decreasing. Obviously, it increases as conflicts come about, but mostly it's been decreasing since the draft time. There's approximately 65% of those 1.3 are active duty and 35% are National Guard. And there's roughly 19 million veterans that are in our population today. Most of those fall from the Gulf War, who actually took over that kind of, if you call it the lead, from the Vietnam era and the prior wars. And most of them are white, about 75%. About 80% are males, 20% are females. And as our population changes, so do those numbers. We are gaining more and more diversity in our ranks, and we're also having more women in leadership positions amongst the military. Average age is between 25 and 64. And here's kind of the setup for this. The top 5 health problems that face veterans today, as recorded by Pew Research and the Wounded Warrior Project: sleeping problems, PTSD, anxiety, depression, bone joint or muscle injuries. And with that, I think we're going to set up a little bit more of our conversation as to the state of veterans in our community, specifically around homelessness. So, Rachel, I'm going to start with you.
Thanks so much. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
No worries. When the general public typically thinks about veterans, and if they think about the tip of the spear for services that come to veterans, we go to the VA. Talk to us about your perspective. Does the national stats that I just shared kind of tie back to our local community? Are there any differences there? Anything that you can share from your expertise?
Yeah, I think so. So there's 2 different populations we're talking about. The VA as a whole serving does reflect the population that you're speaking of or referencing, and the race and everything really lines up. We do know, though, about the homeless population. It is disproportionately affected with minority populations.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the homeless population separated off from that, homeless veterans, certainly we have a higher discrepancy or population of particularly Native American and African American veterans that have served in the past. But as far as overall stats of who we serve at our VA, that would be about the correct percentages.
Okay. Let's dig in a little bit. I know your expertise comes from mental health side. Obviously, those challenges or the illnesses that I mentioned for veterans above, the vast majority of those really focusing on the mental side of things and mental health. Can you share with us a little bit of your perspective of some of the challenges that our local veterans are facing with regards to mental health and what you're seeing?
Sure. So, our veteran population, they're all very unique and complex and diverse. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind with our veteran population is one person's story is one person's story. One person experiences just that. And what we know about PTSD is that if certain people have genetic propensities, that can lead to the manifestation of some of those mental health symptoms. So a lot of what we see in our individuals that are coming in for mental health services is complex histories and complex trauma histories, whether that be their military veteran service that they have a trauma history from, might be something in their life that they have that trauma history from, or it generally might be, if we're talking about more the homeless population, the trauma that can come with being homeless. So all of these things lead to this very complex picture of each individual veteran that takes someone with experience and understanding to really come into them and find, how do we meet the needs of this individual person and their mental health needs? So I think that's probably the most important thing, or the most reflective thing, is that each individual has that complex history, and we can't generally blanket apply anything to each individual's experience. And so when we're sorting that out, we have to start with sorting out some of those complexities and have some trauma-informed care. So,
well, you're speaking a lot about individuals. We were talking a little bit about the table, but the identification of the homeless population in Sioux Falls to then jump down to who amongst that homeless population are actual veterans. Identifying veterans has to be a challenge across the board. Can you share with us how, and I'm going to open this up to the group in a minute, but how from a VA's perspective do you identify who are homeless veterans that need services in our area?
You know, this is something I have a lot of pride about because I have some of my staff going into ditches to check on people. We will go wherever we need to ensure that our veterans are getting those services that they need. And so we try to do outreach on the streets. We certainly work with VOA a lot, and they have a wonderful outreach center that we collaborate with them. A lot of people come into the outreach center. All of these ways, like there is no wrong door for a homeless veteran to reach us. We also have collaboration with our community partners down at Bishop Dudley, Union Gospel. The VA does outreach to all those places, trying to identify where are those veterans. We will go to homeless encampments. I am very fortunate right now to have a lot of staff that I work with that they're not afraid to go anywhere. You know, so that's one of the beautiful things. And our community partners, I think what's unique about all of us is we're just going to do whatever is best for the veteran. There is no competing organization in our community. We're going to do whatever is best for them. And so if going to, you know, Eric in the Veterans Community Project is the best fit for them, that's what we want for them too. And we're going to do whatever we need to help facilitate that.
Well, I'm going to jump over to the cooperation between the two of you in a couple different ways. But Robert, thank you for your service, first of all. And talk to us a little bit about how you might differ from the VA and how you might complement and work together with regards specifically to what Rachel just brought up, and that's the Veterans Community Center. I think that's an important point to lift up.
Right. You know, I think that you hit on it right. It's a collaboration between the VA and Volunteers of America, and we've been doing this for well over 10 years now, and I think we have a very strong relationship with the VA and other agencies too, and we can't wait to collaborate with Eric and the VCP here. So, and I know there are already conversations happening in the back burner that are above my pay grade, so to speak, but I know they're happening, and I can't wait to watch things unfold. Going back to how we're different. The VA obviously handles more of the mental health and the physical health side of things. We handle case management through a housing program that I particularly am very proud of coordinating. It's called Grant Per Diem, and it's transitioned in place, which is different than a lot of other Grant Per Diem programs around the nation. Most of them, a huge percentage of them are like a barrack style situation or an apartment that is taken over and they all live in the same location. We at VOA, through our TIP program that transitioned in place, we locate veterans in various apartment buildings that we have relationship with those landlords with. And we've been doing that. We've got long-standing relationships, as I mentioned before. But as far as identifying veterans, it's the same thing that Rachel was talking about. We partner with the VA, and the center that we have, which is located at the intersection of 14th and Cliff. I'm not sure if folks are aware of where we're located, actually. We're open to any veteran coming in. You know, a lot of the grants that we operate and work with, they're discharge specific. You might qualify for VA care. They might not qualify for whatever reason. There are a plethora of reasons that a veteran can end up with that specific discharge status. But at our center, our doors are open. We don't care what their discharge status is. We don't care how long they've served. And once they come into that, they're kind of in our family. And then we decide, with the help of the VA, there's a filtration process involved, what program, like we mentioned, is best fit for that veteran, because there are quite a few programs that can help the housing situation.
So a couple things that I heard there that I want to make sure that we're foot stomping. One's the location of the community center, right? So I think that if we look amongst our population today, those in this room, we are the Downtown Rotary Club. We are located downtown. The community center that you have from VOA of Dakotas is located downtown as well.
Correct. Yes, we are.
Strategically positioned, I'm assuming, to be able to serve the needs of the people who are primarily.
Quite a bit of foot traffic. And a lot of other services are located in that area as well, too.
Something else that you mentioned that I want to make sure that we take a minute on, and that's there are various levels of discharge that from a military perspective, either open up the VA to you or open up specific programs within the VA to you. And I know Eric's got some information on this as well, but maybe either one of you, Robert or Eric, talk a little bit about that status. That's a DD-214 for anybody in the room that's a military guy. It's a pretty important, or gal, it's a pretty important form to have, but it also either opens doors or closes doors for you. So somebody talk about the 214.
Yeah, so the discharge status will dictate what program you qualify for. So if you got an honorable discharge and have the right status of service, you qualify for full benefits through the VA. And then it can go down from there depending on discharge status, type of service you had, time of service, those types of criteria. And as long as an individual meets those criteria, they can then utilize that program. What gets more difficult as you go down that spectrum, if you had a less than honorable discharge, or if you didn't serve very long, say you got discharged straight out of basic training, you likely don't qualify for all of the programs the VA offers. And for example, if while you were serving, you had undiagnosed PTSD from your previous deployment, which then caused you to self-medicate and not behave the way the military would like you to, you were likely dishonorably discharged. Well, now you don't have a steady paycheck, you have undiagnosed and treated post-traumatic stress, and you're self-medicating, you now need those that help more than ever, and you might not qualify for everything. So that's why programs like Veterans Community Project was founded to serve all veterans that are falling through the cracks from other programs.
Let's stay there just for a minute, because I think VCP is I would say the newcomer amongst this group on the stage, but very important and something I think our community can be very proud of, what we're standing up. Tell us a little bit about VCP, where it got started, quickly on that part, and then ultimately where you are right now in the process of bringing tiny homes to the Sioux Falls area.
Sure thing. So Veterans Community Project was founded in Kansas City when a group of veterans who volunteered in the different areas of the veteran space became frustrated that the people that needed the help the most, they could not get into the program that made the most logical sense because they had a less than honorable discharge and they needed the help the most. So their solution was they came up with this concept of building a village of tiny houses in a not so nice area of Kansas City to house these veterans. And then while they were housed, they would then work with them to overcome whatever brought them to this point. You jump ahead, there was a lot of success and they got a lot of attention and they kept refining and building on the program. So now everybody knows VCP for the tiny house village, but in addition to that, while a veteran is housed in the village, there's full wraparound case management services. So once you are identified as a good fit for the program, you're brought in and your case manager works with you to figure out how'd you get there, what do we need to overcome to help you get past this, what services do you need to be lined up with to help get you through whatever it is that you have to deal with, either it's addiction or mental health or any number of issues. And then that regular meeting with your case manager is what then brings you through the program, because Veterans Community Project is a transitional housing program. We're not a permanent solution. Our village in Kansas City has 49 houses. The average resident stays there between 10 and 14 months. And the village in Kansas City has an 85% success rate, which is well above the average. On average, a transitional housing program in the United States has a 40% success rate, which is deemed acceptable. But that's not a good enough threshold for us. We want to serve our brothers and sisters at a higher rate than that. So we're proud of our 85% success rate, but here in Sioux Falls, we're going to strive to surpass that.
I think it's definitely something that the whole community is excited for. And I know for those serving veterans, having additional resources is always a great thing as well. A couple things I heard you say that I want to make sure. One, it's short-term housing. Two, you do have battle buddies. I think battle buddies is an important statement to be said. I think most veterans Housing is obviously a human component, right? Having a house over your head gets you to be in a safe place where you can all of a sudden start to work on those issues that are there. But I think for a lot of veterans, would you guys agree, it's about being around other veterans, that family and that camaraderie that you need to be able to open up to what's going on with you.
And that component of community is one of the many reasons why VCP is successful. I like to look at our village as it's the community we all wished we lived in. When you move into the village welcomes you. Like, people will bring cookies to your door and invite you to dinner. And you get home from work and everybody sits on their front porch and talks to each other. It's very Leave It to Beaver, but with far more cursing. And our village has family housing in it as well. So there'll be children playing and folks walking their dogs. And it really is this idyllic little village in the middle of the city.
That's great. I think just for sake of time, if I'm sitting here and I'm a general person in the audience that doesn't know a whole lot about veterans and ultimately is looking at this from, okay, so there's 3 different organizations serving the same population that's ultimately a subsection of a much larger population, but really focused on that subsection. You would think that there's some overlap here, right? So the VA provides services, caseworkers, case management. VOA provides case management. VCP is now coming to the community, offers case management. I think it's easy to look at it from the perspective of this is just yet another organization that's setting up for funding in the community. But I think the critical piece here is let's talk about how we're actually working together across these 3 organizations. So could we maybe just take it from the perspective of Eric, a veteran that is coming in, either identified via VOA's community center or maybe through someone in the community that knows somebody. How do I work through the 3 different organizations in order to help me get to the place where we all want me to see me go?
Yeah, I think, I'm happy to start, and Eric can kind of kick in too as well. But for our services, someone just coming in, they can walk in the VA any day of the week and say they want to talk to a homeless social worker or the intake worker. And so say if it was you would present to us and you would say, hey, I'm having these struggles with my housing. I'm going to be evicted in 2 weeks. I got kicked out of my place. Whatever the presenting problem is, we sit down and we do an intake with them, and as much information as they're willing to share, that's what we take. Then we start presenting some options fairly quickly, whether that option be going over to Baraka House where they can be emergently housed just for short term while we're figuring out what is the longer term plan. Is the longer term plan grant per diem? Is it our HUD BASH program? Is it Eric's program? Those things are all things that we're going to sit down with the veteran. We're going to say, this is what this program looks like, and here are some of your issues. How can we meet in between, and what sounds best to you? What's most important to us is what's their voice? What do they want in programming? If they want to take over the lease of their own apartment and then they have employment goals, Robert's program is a great fit for them to come into that and really go into that. We are so excited now to have Eric too as an alternative option, that some of these folks that don't fit in, like he was saying, this is a warm and welcoming place for them to come, and we're all passionate about whatever is best for them. So, having him here too, I think will just complete and serve some of those folks that we haven't been able to previously, and we're so very happy to partner in that way. So again, back to your question, we do that intake, and then a lot of it is here are the options available to you, which can be a little bit overwhelming, but they're all very different and unique programs. They have different, like you said, eligibility criteria. They have different rules and regulations. Some of them are expanding, and then sometimes we come to a place where we're like, no, this, Eric's program sounds like the best fit. I've told him a couple times that I have a running tally of people that I think would potentially be great fits there. So to me, and what we know about veteran homelessness is collaboration in the places that have really tackled veteran homelessness. Collaboration is key. And so it's not about a competing silo issue. It is how do we best partner for them to meet those of those who served. So
I think that's the VA, like the VA intake process, right?
Yeah.
But if we come back to that D Form 214,
Yeah.
doesn't always open up that door of the
Sure.
VA, but the community center and other resources are
Yep.
available. Can you talk to us? And I know Baraka House got mentioned as well. Touch on that for just a little bit. How do you see the intake process work? And then how do you maybe reciprocate the VA's cooperation with you to help that vet? How do you flip that on the other side?
Right. So veteran comes into our building, and we have a lot of new veterans, male and female, and families coming into our building now. So they'll go through a really brief intake process with us, get to know why they're here, what they're looking for, how we can help them, just basic information. And then we take that information, and as far as like if it's for a housing scenario, we send that information to the VA. The VA they're kind of like the top of the filter, like I mentioned before, and there are so many programs that are involved now also that the best fit is determined at that point. We offer other services at our center too, but as far as like the housing and the experiencing homelessness, we refer. So my answer is pretty short as far as that goes. We take the information and give it to the VA. We don't kick them out after that. At that point, they become part of our family, and we identify other areas that we can help them in. If they're not VA eligible, we have relationships with other agencies here in town, hospitals, SSVF, right? We have all sorts of really long-lasting relationships and really good working relationships too, where we can provide and at least go in and advocate strongly for the veteran at that point.
Okay. Eric, jumping on this conversation, I feel like I know your group a little bit. You're more of the, I would say, boots on the ground approach, if you will, a little bit more in the gritty side of trying to get in and trying to identify where vets are. I think it's important to know, like a lot of people, vets are proud. It's a pride situation, I think, to a certain extent, when a vet isn't necessarily going to be open to walking up and saying, I'm dealing with this issue or I'm struggling with this. I know you can extend that comment across other populations, but from vets specifically, it's very difficult, I think, to admit that you're struggling with something. How is VCP approaching intake and identification?
Sure thing. So Veterans Community Project at our Kansas City location and the other expansion sites all have a full outreach facility where there's field outreach personnel as well as folks that man a desk that people can come in and have questions asked. Well, we're not building that here because as VCP decide to come to Sioux Falls, that center is already existing through VOA. So for us here in Sioux Falls, the way we do things will be very different than our other locations, because in Kansas City and Longmont and St. Louis, they don't have a facility like the one the VOA has. So VCP is creating them. For us here in Sioux Falls, we're still creating how that will look because we're the new kid in town, but it'll be through partnerships with the VA, as well as we're in talks of actually having our outreach operations housed within VOA's facility, so that we're right there working with the folks as they come in. But in addition, we'll still have field outreach folks that will work the population with our partners to ensure that we can find everybody, and regardless of their situation, we can help connect them with whatever it is that they need that we can access.
I think another great testament to who we are as a community would be the Alliance. So a lot of us are familiar with the Alliance here in Sioux Falls, and I believe, are you still housed office in the Alliance? Yeah, so they offered very, very affordable, if not free, office space for VCP when they came to town. Robert, where are you actually housed at?
We're there also. We're upstairs.
That's what I thought. So again, when you think about collaboration, when you think about how do you actually work together to be able to accomplish a mission, this is a prime example of that. Couple quick things before we close. It's important to know what the goals are. So let's look at the totality of who are we talking about? How many homeless veterans, based on the latest statistics, do we have in the community of Sioux Falls?
So that's I was telling Eric earlier, it's kind of a moving target, right? So we do what's called the point in time count. And that is a statewide count that's accessible on HUD. And they take a particular night and they ask individuals, homeless individuals, were you housed or not last night? Where did you sleep last night? And gather that information. So with that information on that particular night in January that we do the point in time count, there was 42, and that was a statewide number. However, this gets to be more complex, right? Because that 42 is only one night in evaluation. We have an average throughput. And so if you take into configuration all the algorithms, I'm happy to chat anyone about that later. But we say that in the Sioux Falls area, it's about 158 that come through or throughput throughout the year. So it's a significant source of people. And then we have other veterans who are on homeless programming already that continue to maintain that status. We have 128 veterans in our HUD VASH program. And then, of course, we have grant per diem and contract residential. And so it's a number that's in flux. It's hard to get pinned down. But in any particular night, we would, consider that there might be around that number of veterans in our state unhoused.
Well, I think anybody could agree that any homeless veteran is one too many.
Yep.
I think it's a testament to the organizations here that if we continue to work together, we're going to make progress on what we're looking at there. 150, 25 homes coming online here in the next, how long?
The first 5 foundations are going in this week. So we'll have those first 5 family units coming online this winter, and the remainder of the houses coming online next spring and summer.
So that's a step forward. I mean, in conjunction with the other programs that are out there and the transitional housing that we have currently, I think we're making a step to address a problem that is, one that a lot of communities are facing. But 3 organizations right here working together and collaborating to try and make that negative a positive for our community. So thank you very much to everyone here. Appreciate everyone's time. Thank a veteran this week, and really appreciate everybody.
Thank you all for being here. That was certainly enlightening, and grateful for the work that you do and the way in which you do it. Collaboration. I truly believe in synergy and the sum being greater than the parts. And the story today, I think, reinforced that and gives me a lot of confidence in the work that's being done in our community. So thank you all for being a part of that work. Tomorrow is Election Day. And if you have not yet voted, I certainly hope that you take the time and do so tomorrow. Kind of a fun story. Our our junior Rotarians last month certainly sat through a number of enlightening and educational programs. And one of those junior Rotarians turned 18 in the month of October. And she went up to Angie on the last Monday of the month and said, "I am so informed. I cannot wait to go and vote." So what a gift that we don't always see each and every day, but that certainly resonates with me. And I thought that story might resonate with all of you. Our program next week, as already mentioned, Homelessness Task Force. I think we'll find a great deal of information from that as well. Thank you all for being here. Rotary is adjourned.